Here.
Alderman Gravenhorst.
Here.
Alderman Widman.
Here.
Alderman Elliott.
Here.
Alderman Morse.
Here.
Alderman Hanrahan.
Here.
Alderman Luby.
Here.
Alderman Haddad.
Here.
9 present, no absent. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under my comments this evening, I only have one. It's turned warmer. We have salt. And we are moving forward to clean the streets. Thank you for the rain this weekend. The vertical rain was and the horizontal rain today was a very nice touch to add our winter blues over. But I want to thank again the city staff who have been working very hard to get the streets cleaned up and doing scraping after the last time I've talked to you. And I think we're getting a handle on it and moving forward. That's the end of my comments, and I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First item under my report is a report from our representative to the Lake County Board, Susan Gravenhorst. Susan wants to give us an update on strategic planning and other things going on at the county board level. Susan?
Thank you very much, Bob. I haven't been here for a while, so I'm glad to be here this evening. I have so many things to tell you about. It's a very exciting year for the county. And the first thing I want to say is that we have very happy news that we are nearing completion on the Skokie Valley bike path. We've been working on that for about 10 years, possibly partly because we had to get special arrangements made with the Union Pacific Railroad. But anyway, things are moving forward, and as you know, the bike path starts at Lake County Road, Cook County, and our county, Lake County, so Lake Cook Road. And it goes north to Laurel Avenue, and then when it goes farther north with the completion, it will go on up to 176, where it will join the North Shore bike path, and then it will meander on north, and that's when we'll have to tunnel under the Union Pacific Railroad tracks in that area. So that's been taking some negotiating. I didn't realize that negotiating with railroads could be such a lengthy process. Anyway, that's going to go on, then we'll take hikers and bikers up north to the Wisconsin line, then back down to the Des Plaines River Trail. So we can make a whole complete circumference of area in northern Illinois, which is just great for all of us. So we're hoping that everyone will enjoy it, and we're going to work badly to getting it completed. You probably noticed that another bike path is being installed on Everett Road, across the tollway over to meet up with River Woods Road, and that should be finished within the next few months. And also another thing that you probably noticed if you live on that part of town is that there's great congestion at the corner of Everett Road and River Woods in the morning and evening hours. And so we're hoping to do something about that in the future. And the current plan is, if it goes through and money is available, that we'll put in what used to be called a rotary, but now it's called a roundabout. And that facilitates traffic much more quickly. So that's our hope for the future. And we want to try to arrange eradication of that problem as soon as possible. The next thing I want to tell you about tonight is that we have a very important project coming up in the county, and I think you all have this in your packets. We've been working on a strategic plan for a year, and we'll continue to do so for the next year. And we have already assimilated our group of short-term goals, which include transportation, water, economic development, and so forth. But we need long-term goals definitely designated. So we're holding these meetings in 6 different areas of the county during the month of March. And there are 3 that I think are convenient for all of you in the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area. There is one on, let's see, it's Monday, March 18th. No, it's on the 10th over in Libertyville at the Department of Transportation building. I think perhaps you know where that is. It's right behind Winchester House. Then there's another one that's at Highland Park Country Club, which would be very convenient for us in Lake Forest, and that's on Tuesday, March 18th. And then there's another one at the county courthouse if you want to go north. Then there are 3 others out farther into the county, north and west. So I hope you'll try to attend. We're trying to meet with the residents of the county to get their input on what we should be doing in the county, the forward-thinking goals that we have, may not be what people want. And we're hoping that they'll come at 6 o'clock to the forum. There will be displays there and information given on services that the county provides. And then at 7 o'clock, the meeting will begin, which will just consist of discussion groups and a chance for everyone to express himself freely. And if you really want to, you could also be interviewed on Lake County television. So those are the ideas for the night. But I hope the whole secret of this is getting people there so they can give us their ideas. So please pass along this information to your friends. I left some folders at the back of the room, and we're going to try and publicize it as much as we can. I also want to tell you about the Discovery Museum. I hope you've been to the Discovery Museum at Lakewood Forest Preserve. It's receiving a very distinctive honor this coming month. It has been cited as the 2008 Library of the Year by the North Suburban Association of Libraries, which consists of about 650 libraries and educational institutions and public buildings. And if you've been to the county, to the museum, and you've seen what they do out there, you'll know why they're being awarded this award. It's going to be on March 14th. I'm going to attend with the director, and it's just really a great coup, a great a step up for the county. Also, I wanted to mention that someone was talking about icy roads a few minutes ago. The county tried to do their best with the icy roads. There were problems, of course, with getting enough salt and taking care of things, but I wanted to be sure you knew that the good old passage highway system that we have, which I told you about some months ago, was very much active in that, and people could tune to AM 1620 to get reports on the road conditions, which I think was a big help to everybody. So I hope you'll continue to use that passage system. Another thing I wanted to tell you about is that in the 19th Judicial Circuit, the judges there are making plans for new arrangements for future courtrooms. I don't know if you know that we have a new chief judge, David M. Hall, and he has statistically figured out that by the year 2000, I believe it's 2039, there probably will be 1 million people in Lake County. So there's going to be a great need for additional courtrooms and additional judges. I think we have 27 judges now and 21 courtrooms. And in that year, with that amount of population, we'll need about 57. So they're also already working on that, and as you know, we have a couple of fairly new branch courts in Lake County as well. I want to also mention that out at Lakewood, where the museum is located, we will be having the Civil War encampment this year, and I want to be sure you have those dates. July 12th and 13th. Saturday the 12th is the day that the camp is established. People are there in costume, living as they would have lived in that era if they were there at the camps at the battle site. And then on the 13th, Sunday, is the battle. And it usually begins about 1 o'clock. And I hope if you haven't been to that, you'll get there because it is really wonderful and so authentic, so realistic. So I hope you'll keep those dates in mind. Then I also wanted to mention that we're still in contention for the 2016 Olympics. And we're told that we are #1 on the list for the equine division, along with a location in Wisconsin and a location in DuPage. But they feel our location is the best. And we have changed our plans a little bit. We finally decided that the best place to have it is at the Raven Glen Forest Preserve, which is in the north part of the county, because Abbott has made available 500 acres, which is adjacent to the Forest Preserve, that we could also use for the equine displays. And don't forget, if we do get this wonderful appointment, we will receive $12.5 million worth of facilities that will be left to us at no charge by the Olympic Committee. So we're still very hopeful of that. We're working, people on our board are working with the Olympic Committee, hoping that will work out. And in addition, I wanted to be sure you knew about the, I guess you would call it a stable. Actually, it's a learning center out on Bradley Road that is available especially to disabled persons, especially children, where they learn by horseback riding how to attain certain skills that they don't have otherwise. And I think that's just a very important feature that we have in the county that most people don't know anything about. Also, at Ryerson Woods, everything is green. We have a new welcome center that is just lovely and is incorporating all the new ecological advances in architecture. And we have there also, I don't know if you're familiar with them, rain gardens that are planted with plants that flourish in additional water. And if you have trouble with water currently, well, you might think of a rain garden in your own garden for next year. Also, we're selling rain barrels, and they're just great looking. They're really do work. You could easily install it at your home, and then that water can be used for so many uses. In fact, we've applied to the state now to use rain barrel-contained water that we collect as means of flushing the toilets at the Welcome Center. And we hope to get approval for that because that's a new coming way of using water more sparingly and not using the public water. So that too is it. And you can get them in different colors, or you can get them in just plain rain barrel. But a lot of people are buying them. Maybe you've seen them around town. So I think it's a good idea. Water, speaking of water, is our theme in the county for this year. Whether or not you realize it, it's a very important subject, an issue, because there's no guarantee that we have enough water in Lake County, even though we're right on the doorstep of Lake Michigan. Some water feasibility studies have been made, and they're being presented around the county at different municipalities. And we're going to have a very big meeting that we have every year. It's called the Smith Symposium out at Ryerson Woods. And it's it's really a wonderful meeting because it's a dinner, and the speaker every year is always excellent. And this year it's Peter Annan, who has just come out with his book called The Great Wars of the Great Lakes. And it's how we're going to use the water. Already we're getting letters and requests from people all over the United States, from areas, states, who want to share in our water. And it's the mission of the consortium of Great Lakes states to reserve that water and be sure that we aren't giving it all away. So it's a very big issue, and I think if you have time to attend that night, I think it's on Saturday night, May 10th, you'd find it very interesting. I'm going to bring another a video later on, probably in April, that is very well done, I think, and tells you where your tax dollars go. And I think you're all interested in that. And it will give you good information, and that ties in with the work that our assessor is doing, our county assessor, in trying to make his projects and his work more understandable and more customer friendly, as he puts it. I have just a few more things. I don't know if you know Susie Schmidt, our board chairman, but she was just elected chairman, or rather president, of the metro counties of the area. And she's doing a wonderful job, as she does as our chairman of our meetings. If you ever watch the meetings, you know that they move right ahead without interruption as a rule. Then also, I wanted you to know that I'm serving on Mark Kirk's Education Advisory Board. And so if there's anything, any thoughts of yours that I can take to that board at its meetings, I'd be glad to do so. Mark has just submitted the bill that's moving along very well, called Student and Teacher Safety, trying to make schoolrooms more safe for everyone in the light of things that have happened lately, particularly with gun use. And then I know that John will want to know about this. I'm still trying to work on the Senior Center transportation money. We're working on a possibility of getting funds from the tax fees that have been allocated for the collar counties. And I've prepared a proposal and submitted it to our transportation director, because it will go through the transportation area, because it comes from PACE and so forth. So anyway, that's moving along, I hope. But I'm not forgetting about it at all, and we'll hope to get that money if we can, because I know it's certainly needed. I think that they received a new car recently from the township, Shields Township, so that I'm sure was a great help. And I think that just about concludes all the things I wanted to tell you about. As you can see, we're very busy, have lots going on. Oh, one more thing. They have so many interesting exhibits at the Discovery Museum. You know, the Discovery Museum is out just off 176 near Wakanda. It's an easy drive from here. And their new display, which just began, I think it was the 13th of February, is a display of memorable covers, record album covers, that have a great artistic value. And that should be very interesting, I think, to everybody, because everybody has enjoyed records over the years. So that will be going on until August 13th. So you might want to get out there for that. So I hope you'll avail yourself of all these exciting things that are happening, fun, interesting things, informational things, And as always, it's a pleasure for me to serve because I'm just enjoying it so much and I learn so much myself. So if I can help in any way with information that you may want, please let me know. And please do try to attend our forums because, as I said, they won't be successful at all if people aren't there to advise us of their wishes. So thank you all for allowing me to speak with you tonight. I've enjoyed it. I'll be back again.
Susan, is there any expected completion date for the extension of the bike path?
I would say probably, I would hope maybe by this fall.
Okay.
We'd like to have it ready for people to use.
Yeah, great.
They've been held off for so long. But now that we have the Union Pacific on our side, why, I guess everything will go well. I certainly hope so.
And Susan, I want to thank you for your years of service to not only
You're
our
welcome,
community,
Mike.
but to the community at large. I know you've been a public official for a number of years, so thank you for taking the
You're
time
very
to
welcome.
come
It's
to us.
certainly my pleasure.
And thank you, Susan, for continuing to work on funding that senior transportation.
I'm
'cause
not
it
giving up, John.
really is important, and,
It is.
and you're really working at it, so
Well,
thank you very much.
I hope it will work out.
Any other questions?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, I'll pass back to you.
Okay. Before Marcus, before you get started with the presentation tonight, I'd like to have a few comments about the topic we're going to talk about, which is the Elawa Farms. Tonight is a celebration and admiration for what has been done. After 10 years of hard work and efforts by many dedicated residents, we are nearing completion of the restoration and reuse of the historic Elawa Farms complex. We celebrate the vision, preservation and preservance and generosity that have transformed this dilapidated gentleman's farm into an inviting environmental educational facility. This facility preserves the past and creates tremendous learning opportunities for the present and the future. There are many individuals that deserve our admiration. Thank you, members of the Elawa Farms Commission. Thank you, Ashley Mentz, and the members of the Elawa Farm Foundation. Thank you to numerous donors, and a special thanks goes to Bob Shaw, Christina Shaw, Tom Hunter, and Liz Uline. Without you, this would still be a vision. This significant preservation project was anything but easy. From 1999 to 2007, the Foundation Commission raised approximately $400,000 to supplement the original developer's contribution, which financed the Phase 1 improvements to approximately 50% of the eastern buildings. Despite their hard work and effort, the community support was limited, and many questions of what was to become of the balance of the buildings existed. But it paid off, and an angel in the form of Liz Uline took personal interest in the project and made not one but two large charitable donations. Her generosity, along with that of Tommy Hunter, ensured that 90% of the complex could be adaptively reused for a broad community use. This community owes a debt of gratitude to both Ms. Uline and Ms. Hunter for stepping forward and taking charge of this to make this vision come to happen for our community. While every effort has been made over the past 10 years to preserve the complex in its entirety, we knew from the start that such a goal was going to be a stretch. The Commission, Foundation, Ad hoc Committee, and City Council correctly focused their efforts on the preservation of the two main rows of buildings. This focus was guided by a 1998 historical resource assessment by Susan Benjamin, which stated, saving the Adler-designed chicken coop located on the west of the Hodgkins Farm Group would be of secondary importance if tough preservation decisions have to be made because of cost considerations. Although it was built by David Adler, the poultry house was not designed as an integral part of the farm group and has no distinguishing details. The good news is that in accordance with that assessment, structures of the highest historical value have been preserved, and bricks from the chicken coop will be salvaged and used in restoring the main remaining buildings. Before closing, let me emphasize that the work is not over. The Elawa Foundation still needs your support. They have done a tremendous job up to this point, and I hope that the citizens will rally together to help them get across the finish line. On behalf of the City Council and the Lake Forest community, I want to again thank all of the individuals who made this dream a reality. Marcus, you want to show us what's been going on?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight I'm going to have some some photos, but just a quick synopsis in addition to what you had just said. The renovation began in spring of 2007. Primary funding sources are from very generous donations that the foundation received from local residents, totaling over $2 million. It's expected that all interior renovations of this phase will be completed by April of 2008, with landscaping improvements expected to occur, if not earlier, by fall of 2008. Additionally, the newly renovated spaces for this project include foundation office and conference room, a visitor center, a kitchen learning center, other miscellaneous classrooms and conference rooms, a seasonal garden market, a garden club workshop, and a basement for storage. And you'll see in a slide in the future why I'm highlighting basement, because we didn't think, frankly, it was going to be usable. In addition, the organizations listed on the board here as well have previously indicated to the city intentions to have programming, and the city is currently working with these organizations to try to solidify arrangements. And that includes the foundation itself, the Garden Stewards, Lake Forest Garden Club, Wildlife Discovery Center, School Districts 115 and 67, Lake Forest Open Lands, and Chicago Botanic Garden. Next to me is John. John is with Lake Forest Landmark Development. He's the architect and construction manager for the project. And we're going to cycle through some pictures, and John is going to briefly tell you what you're looking at.
Thanks, Marcus. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Alderman. My name is John Krasnodebski, and I'm currently working on the Elawa Farms project. This is a pre-phase 2 photograph that shows the work in phase 1, and this is before we started the project. So the next photo shows the condition of the Elawa farm probably about 3 weeks ago after one of our more recent snowstorms. And the work that's in place right now is completely re-roofing of the project. What we did is we stripped the old slate off and found a very nice match with new slate, and we did put down new underlayment and Grace ice and water shield over the whole complex. And this photograph shows the condition of some of the interior spaces we found once we demolished the plaster. And so as you can see, a lot of rot and a lot of structural work needed to be done, a lot of replacement of some of the wood structure. This is typical of one of the classroom spaces that we are now, that's now in place. This was one of the gentlemen's living quarters in the classroom area. You can see the condition of the plaster, and it's in pretty poor shape. Again, another typical photo of the condition of the interior of the space that we've reworked. Here's another photograph of the wagon shed, and you can see many rotted areas and holes in the roofing, and so we've completely redone much of that. This is a photograph of the existing basement that now has been completely renovated. That shows it in the lower right-hand corner. So we really cleaned it up, put interior drain tile, new sump pumps, got rid of all the mold and asbestos, and very poor condition of the basement. All new mechanicals, electrical, plumbing. So it's really going to, bring that building into the next generation. This is an example of the restored windows. Many of the existing windows that are at Elawa Farm we restored. Took them to a shop down in southern Illinois and did a great job restoring. And what windows we could not restore, or windows that were completely gone and replaced with an unsensitive material, we've replicated with new windows that match very closely, exactly to the original windows. Those are in the lower right-hand corner. This is a typical work that we did in the interior of the space. We reconfigured the gentlemen's quarters and made it into a flexible classroom space. We doubled up much of the structure, the studs, completely new floor structure, new roof structure. We also vaulted it and got a couple more feet out of the space, so we have a more lofty feel throughout the whole area. On the right-hand side, you can see a finished picture. This was taken last week. So we've painted that space, the new hardwood flooring's in, and we're going to be installing light fixtures next week. This is an example of some of the window restoration work that we've done. That's one of the exterior round windows in the gable end, and that's a restored window, and we've brought it so it's visible in the inside of the classroom. Before, it was covered by roof structure. This is the kitchen learning center, space that's been completely reconfigured, and these are new cabinets and new appliances. All new mechanicals, again, heating, plumbing, and electric. This is the old ice house, which is now a conference room. We did sprinkler the whole building. This has mechanical spaces at the back of this room. All the spaces are insulated now, and so it should be very energy efficient. And here's a landscape plan that we're planning to implement this summer. Certainly all the landscaping around the building will be started in the spring and hopefully will be completed by the fall. To the right on the landscape plan, that's the conservancy plan. That's not in our current scope of work, but certainly all the work around the buildings are going to be implemented this upcoming season. Thank you.
Ashley, we'd love to have you come up and give us a report on how things have gone.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I am Ashley Mentz, and I am president of the Elawa Farm Foundation. And as you can see, not everybody knows what's going on at Elawa, but we know a lot more now than we did before. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to give you the Foundation's perspective. Let me say that first, what has taken place in the last year at Elawa, as you can see, is nothing short of amazing. In previous reports to you, I stated that our first challenge had always been education, having people know who we were and where we were. And I think you can see that that's been very nicely accomplished in a big way. Over the last 2 years, there have been almost 500 financial donors to Elawa Farm, contributing over $2 million towards the restoration. Foundation benefit events have entertained over 300 people annually, while raising both friends and funds. All told, $3.4 million has been raised, with a $4.2 million goal in sight. The gardeners of Elawa Farm have over 200 volunteers, 87 in 2007 alone, giving 5,400 hours a year. And their Christmas markets have earned more than enough for their operating expenses and annual planting. The Garden Conservancy visited them late last year and engaged in a long-range planning process that will be an adaptive restoration of the original gardens as you saw on the slide, and it will outline the garden's development for years to come. The Garden Conservancy has scheduled the Garden at Elawa Farm on their annual Open Garden Visiting Days program this summer. It is a nationally publicized and recognized event. There have been approximately 9,000 children and adults each year enjoying classes already, workshops, meetings, and social gatherings in the Hay Barn, sponsored by the Wildlife Discovery Center, garden clubs, and many community organizations. This spring, thanks to the unprecedented generosity of the donors that Mike mentioned, we will realize the completion of the second phase of construction. The entire length of East Buildings and the Western Wagon Shed buildings, as you see, will be restored as multi-use classroom, office, and workspace. New tenants are scheduled to be additional partners in our plans to expand current programming, and Marcus gave you the names of those groups. We'll offer new programming for all ages. There will be space for our local school districts and other educational groups, a demonstration and working kitchen that you've seen, a seasonal garden market, offices and workshop space for garden clubs and for the foundation. A visitor center will be available to welcome those coming to the farm, as well as those who are hiking in the Middle Fork, making Elawa truly an educational and recreational resource center. Finally, we can present to the community the totality of our vision from long ago. Adaptively reused space in restored historic buildings in a remarkable, unique, natural environment available to the community as a center for education and research in the fields of architecture, history, preservation, gardening, wildlife, and all aspects of the environment. It's always been the vision of Elawa Farm to partner with organizations to allow us to be better and accomplish more than our organizations could do individually. With these new partners, this beautifully restored space, and the splendid environment that we sit in, we can achieve that goal. In fact, Elawa has always been a partnership. Since the purchase of the property and the establishment by Mayor Howard Kerr of the original ad hoc committee to develop an identity and business plan for the farm in 1999, it's been a public-private partnership of civic organizations and public entities. That committee and the following evolution to the Elawa Farm Commission were peopled by volunteers representing the Preservation Foundation, Lake Forest Open Lands, the Historical Society, Lake County Forest Preserve, the Garden Clubs, School Districts 67 and 115, Parks and Recreation Department, and the City Council. We worked together to develop a mission for this new organization and worked hard to determine the appropriate use for the future of the buildings and gardens. While advisory to the City Council, this group represented the community, just as all Lake Forest boards and commissions do. The commission and the subsequent mayor's ad hoc committee are no longer functioning. There is no formalized community voice being heard. Currently, the only volunteer input available is from the Elawa Farm Foundation, a separate, private, not-for-profit, originally established to raise funds exclusively for the restoration, operation, and maintenance of the buildings and gardens. Despite our attempts at the fiscal or historic oversight, there's been little input requested or well received during the past year in this latest phase of Elawa's development. We are concerned that as stewards of the funds and trust given to our organization, that by all of our donors, that more of their voice be heard in all aspects of this project. To that end, the Foundation has moved towards adding additional responsibilities, those of operations and planning, to our fundraising duties, in hopes that in the future we will be more able to be involved in the decision-making regarding Elawa. The return to a true public-private partnership can only benefit the further development of Elawa Farm and the community for which it is intended. Which brings me to the project itself. From the beginning, as Mike said, it has been our goal to restore the complex in its entirety, believing in the spirit of if you build it, they will come. We have already seen that to be true, as I pointed out in the numbers earlier. Indeed, one of the current council members said, originally as a member of the Elawa Commission, that we would always be trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, given the size and number of usable spaces at Elawa and the potential of use in the future. However, we always knew that there would also be a possibility of not being able to keep all the buildings should we not be able to meet our funding goals. The Commission prioritized the restoration of the buildings in order of the demand of utilization and the availability of funding. It was slow going at first, due in large part to the aforementioned challenge of being an unknown entity in town. We focused on educating the community about Elawa Farm. A fast track on this project was never expected, demanded, or planned for by the Commission, the Foundation, or we thought, the city. We explored many options for the building's use with many local organizations and gave them ample time to vet their plans, holding off fundraising for long periods of time until many of those decisions were made. Gorton and Ragdale, other city partnerships similar to ours, took anywhere from 15 to 25 years to evolve into their present state. Somehow, in the past 2 years, we have found ourselves expected to arrive at the finish line in a much shorter time frame, like now. Fortunately, through the arrival of one and then another very generous donor, as Mike mentioned, we have been able to almost finish the project. And as I mentioned, the tenants are lining up. We are thrilled with the opportunities that this provides, not only for the future of Elawa, but for our citizens, constituents, and all of the people in our communities and surrounding communities. That's great news. The not so great is that not all of the buildings are provided for in the current funding, and there's little tolerance to wait for phased-in restoration. Consequently, we find that raising the chicken coop, the last building in our restoration plan, as it's been mentioned, is being considered by the city, our landlord. A proposal to clean up and repair the outside with volunteer labor, donated materials, and some initial funding, making the building complementary at least to its newly restored neighbors, has not been accepted. The foundation has looked hard and long at this situation, both economically and practically, and on behalf of our responsibilities to donor and end user alike. We have determined that if the chicken coop is demolished, we will document it very carefully prior to demolition, salvage and store all possible materials, and rebuild it historically, accurately when a new donor is found. In closing, the future of Elawa is extremely bright, as you've just seen, thanks to the vision and hard work and support of so many people, donors, volunteers, and supportive staff. Elawa has always been a lightning rod for all sides of all issues. Kind of a what can go wrong usually does, but it usually also gets fixed. And it gets fixed by cooperation and understanding, and it's worked out with a better understanding on all sides in the end. I'm confident that if we work more closely together, these issues will work themselves out as well. And we can deliver on our original partnership goal of giving back to the community a unique experience unlike anything else in town, a piece of history from a past generation, restored, renewed, and relevant for the next generation. We will celebrate the reopening of Elawa Farm this spring and summer and hope that you all will join us. A ribbon cutting will be held in the middle of April, and celebratory parties are planned for the middle of June. Please call us if you would like more information. Our phone number is 234-1966. We look forward to seeing you then and often at Elawa Farm. Thank you, sir. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I had one question. Ashley, well done. You mentioned if the chicken coop is taken down, that the elements of it, the pieces of it, would be set aside and stored for possible future reconstruction. As you see it, would that include all of the exterior materials?
We would love it if the exterior materials could be saved. Now, I understand that part of the bricks are being documented and potentially used to restore other parts of the main building and the pillars and the paddock wall. We've also had a contribution from a brick company in Ohio who will remake exactly, accurately, to size, scale, and color the bricks that are there. So those bricks would not have to be taken down and used, but they can't be done overnight. And I think that there is a definite time consideration here. So they could be used in the future.
Any other comments? Thank you, Ashley, for your report.
Great job.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is comments from council members. Hearing none, I'll move on to council committee reports. Tom, would you like to give an update?
Just an informational item. We did have another meeting of the Laurel Western Avenue Redevelopment Committee last Tuesday night, and we had a great discussion, presentation from the consultant. Our next meeting is in March, I believe March 18th. So, and that will be at Gorton, if we can hopefully find a good room this time. We had standing room only, but at least we had a lot of good input and comments from the community. So thank you for that, and keep us on our toes, please.
Next item on the agenda is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council. Anyone wish to speak to the council this evening? Okay, I'll move on.
Oh, we got
I'm unclear. I don't understand what a non-agenda item is.
The agenda is below, the consent agenda. Anything that's on, you can speak about the council about anything you'd like to speak about. How's that? If you wish to speak.
That clarification? I'm a newbie. Hello, my name is Rami Lopat. I live at 410 East Woodland Road here in Lake Forest. I just got word yesterday that you were considering the demolition of the chicken house at Elawa Farm, and I wanted to make a few comments and maybe offer a fresh perspective to you. My husband, John Drummond, right over there, is a restoration architect, and myself, I'm an urban planner and a garden writer and a landscape designer. And actually, we don't have any experience in Elawa Farm. We happen to be Ragdale garden designers. But be that as it may, we must say that we are shocked that such a fine farm building designed by David Adler would ever be considered as extraneous to the composition of Elawa Farm. We actually cannot even imagine that such a discussion is being entertained by you. If I can speak for my husband, in his opinion as an architect, the building itself is very repairable, and we say that with all due respect to our friend Susan Benjamin. The steel angle iron lintels are rusted and collapsing, yes, but it is straightforward to replace them and restore the surrounding bricks. The building is solid, it is not under any threat of falling down, and the bricks are in fine shape. The old glass in the windows, and yes, we do say that a lot of the window glass is missing, is fabulous, and some of the sash is in reasonable condition. The two of us happen to be old hands at repairing windows and outbuildings such as these, since we own what used to be an abandoned 1852 Greek Revival farmhouse in Richmond, Illinois. We've won awards for the restoration of our buildings. And I do want to say that in McHenry County, this kind of building would be called a chicken coop, but here in Lake Forest, it's called a poultry house. When we visited Elawa on Saturday, other people were visiting as well. Some of them were saying that the soils, that they heard that the soils there were contaminated. I later saw that the floors there are concrete, so that doesn't seem to be an issue. By chance yesterday, we visited the Ryerson Woods farm in Riverwoods. I take it that all of you have seen it, but I had not before. I want to give you a picture that I took of its chicken house, which is clapboard and far less interesting than the one you're talking about. May I give this to you?
David, do you want to grab that?
As I said, it's clapboard and far less interesting, but they're saving it out there and using it as part of their educational process. And in fact, there is a connection between the two. The architect of the Ryerson farm, which is, as you know, is from Inland Steel, their 1928 Brushwood farm architect was Ambrose Kramer, who studied architecture at Yale and the École des Beaux-Arts. Before setting up his own firm, he worked for, guess who, David Adler. And interestingly, when I came across his name, I kind of scratched my head and thought about it and realized that in my research of the history of my own house on Woodland Road, yes, that whole land was owned by Ambrose Kramer's father. The chicken house at Elawa is a huge part of the composition of the farm buildings. It faces south to protect the animals, and it forms a beautiful enclosure. It is compromised in its attractiveness by the proximity of the parking lot and the corn cribs. And of course, the orange fencing around it, that really makes it look far worse than it is. But we can imagine that a barnyard, if it was formed between the chicken house and the greenhouse, now demolished, would be an incredible part of the education of our children. In fact, I do wish to say that if this Adler building was on private property, in my opinion, the city would not let the owner tear it down. Since this is on city property, we think it is even more of a treasure that should be saved. Now, on our own farm in McHenry County, the favorite place of all the children that come to visit us, and we do open it to the elementary school next door, is, surprise, the chicken coop. We raise black Java chickens there, and black Java chickens are a breed popular in the 1840s, but which were driven to extinction. We got our chickens from the Garfield Farm Museum, which many of you may have visited. It's just west of St. Charles, Illinois. It operates as a house museum from the 1830s, and they breed rare farm animals. The reason I bring all of this up is to remind you that Elawa Farm is all about educating children, and hopefully about educating children in the time period in which it was built.
Please, we keep our comments to 4 minutes, so if you could.
I'm wrapping it up. As it is today, wildlife education seems to trump farm education at Elawa Farm. I hope that the children of this and future generations don't look back at you as the city council that gave away a Lake Forest legacy. And I must say that if you feel that it must come down, first of all, the public should have more information about this. And when in doubt, put it in mothballs. And I do not mean taking it down and storing the materials, because in my opinion, it's far harder to find someone to give you the money when you don't have a building to see. If it's a pile of bricks, it will never get rebuilt. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Alice Moulton Ely, 420 East Woodland Road. I'm going to read something that Art Miller wrote that he was going to read tonight, but he's not feeling very good, and he's at, I believe, 169 Wildwood.
Is this a repeat of what you've given to the council?
Is it Art? No? Okay. Art's our current president of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak representing the Lake Forest Foundation for Historic Preservation concerning the status of the historic David Adler Poultry House at Elawa Farm. This poultry house was designed in 1948 by David Adler for the A. Watson Armors, his clients since the 1910s when they began developing their country retreat here. Retired since the mid-1930s from his country house architectural practice, Adler still built this simple but elegant red brick structure with a slate roof for the farm's poultry operation, at that time and into the 1960s an active part of the farm's life. It is in bad repair and requires scraping and repainting the trim woodwork, replacement of some of the lights in the windows, and addition of new doors, etc. The Preservation Foundation has pledged to the Elawa Foundation $10,000 in seed money to buy materials for this project, to secure and stabilize the structure, while also launching a broader drive for volunteers and funds to complete the work needed for this space to be useful. Indeed, high school student groups and local contractors already are lined up to help turn this chicken feed donation from the foundation into a useful improvement on the poultry house. The immediate task is to secure the building to protect neighborhood children as well as the building itself. It is this task at hand that has caused us to act quickly to save the building from being torn down. In the 1920s and 1930s, scores of such farms west of Lake Forest's former town limits provided milk, eggs, vegetables, etc. for area homes and institutions. Now only one such original poultry house still stands in its original state. We hope that it can be saved, stockpiled for further restoration, adaptive reuse. It has potential as a classroom for visiting groups, etc., but it should be as little changed as possible until a full study can be conducted and an ultimate use determined and funded. The process of holding a building for later redevelopment is a European and East Coast tradition, and in Lake Forest, the college's old 1890 gymnasium, which burned in 1969, was stabilized and held until 1987-88, when finally it was adaptively reused as a classroom facility, now called Hotchkiss Hall. The Preservation Foundation's program yesterday was in that building's Meyer Auditorium, a modern small venue for high-tech presentations. If it had been torn down in 1969-70 or in 1979-80, even this possibility would have been cut off. I urge the council to save this building or allow it to be saved so that in the future it can be put to good use, conserving energy by not requiring a new structure for programming at the site. This is a green solution, not losing the energy already put into the building over half a century ago. Also, we support our preservation ordinances and their positive impact on this community. Saving the fabric which holds together East and West Lake Forest as one community and rooted in its estate-era origins in the century between the town's founding in 1857 and the end of the estate era soon after World War II. We hope that this building's status will be reviewed by the city's Building Review Board. Elawa's Poultry House was one of the last manifestations of this estate era and of its leading architect, David Adler. I hope that we will pay forward this legacy to future generations by saving the structure now. We are here to pledge our support for getting this job done now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Rummel, members of the City Council. My name is Roger Moore, 2000 Knollwood Road, and I'm going to cut the comments I had intended to make short because of the number of comments that have been made. But I do have some credentials for talking about this subject. When I was on the City Council from 2000 to 2006, I was appointed to the Elawa Commission, and I served on the Elawa Commission as long as it existed. For 3.5 years, I think I missed one meeting. When it was dissolved, I was asked to serve on the Elawa Ad Hoc Committee and did so until that committee was dissolved. So I've been there from the beginning almost and been very involved all along. The intention of the Elawa Committee, Elawa Ad Hoc Committee, and the predecessor was always to save all of the buildings if possible. But from the very beginning, the possibility of demolishing buildings loomed in the background. And I don't mean just one building. We had talked about, if funding could not be raised, about the possibility of demolishing both the chicken coop and the wagon shed. However, now the chicken coop is under consideration for being demolished. And I want to remind everybody there is a deed restriction on the use of the property. Back in December of 2005, the city attorney drafted a lengthy document discussing the various legal documents that had to do with operation and development of Elawa Farm. There were a lot of signatories to those documents. And in that memo, there was a paragraph from a special rider to the Elawa deed, which reads as follows: any raising, demolition, or material alteration of the farm buildings located on the property will be subject to review and approved by the Building Review Board of the City of Lake Forest pursuant to its ordinary procedure for notice and public review and comment. Now, you're getting some of those comments tonight, and it's only one paragraph in a rather lengthy document, and I think that perhaps the foundation, perhaps even the City Council overlooked it in a decision that's apparently been made to demolish the chicken coop. I'd like to suggest that the city follow the prescribed process described in that paragraph. It'll buy a little time to find additional donors. The Preservation Foundation has pledged $10,000, which is a modest amount considering the cost of restoring the chicken coop. But remember, the Preservation Foundation was the moving force behind the restoration of the East Lake Forest train station and the restoration of the Bluffs Walden Bridge. So there are people who feel very strongly about this. Perhaps going through the Building Review Board as prescribed in that rider will take a little time, but I don't think it would take a lot of time, and it may just provide enough time for something to be done to save what is really a historic building that a lot of people feel very strongly about, and which I think can be used to good advantage on the future of Elawa Farm. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Former Alderman, sir. Any other comments?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Roger, thank you for your comments. I thought they made a lot of sense. And I'd like to ask, I guess, Bob, maybe you first. Why have we not gone to BRB with this?
Well, the city council certainly has the right, as the owner of the property, if you want to send this to the Building Review Board. But what hasn't been said, and I guess needs to be said, is where have all these people been for the last year and a half?
That doesn't matter. I mean,
well, it does matter because it also ties in with the funding plan for the restoration. As former Alderman Moore pointed out, that a year and a half ago we were talking about not taking just a chicken coop down, but all the western buildings, because there had been no funding in place to do that. We were very fortunate in that an individual stepped forward with funding, but as a part of that was a plan to renovate those buildings that we could renovate within the money that was being given. And I think more importantly, that the brick from the chicken coop was being used to salvage and pay and actually be used as part of the cost, to offset part of the cost of the renovation of those other buildings. So it was part of a package deal, if you want. And so for the last year, efforts have been underway to try and raise approximately $1 million to see if this chicken coop has been or could be salvaged, and it hasn't happened. And so we are at a point where we are in the midst of doing the construction, and that has to go forward. Now, if one of the other parties to that deed, Lake Forest Open Lands, wants to step forward and ask us to go through that, or if the city council wants us to ask us to go through that, you have that authority to do so.
but we have to instruct
You would have to
staff
take an action here of the
to-
city council to submit
to
that to
do
the Building
this.
Review Board.
Was it ever stated clearly that the plan involved dismantling the chicken house for use? I mean, the
Yes,
reason
it
we're
did.
destroying this is, or demolishing it is to get the brick, essentially. Is that right?
That was part of the original plan
Part of the
dating back
original.
a year ago.
So this should not have come as a surprise to so many people.
No, it was in the correspondence conveyed to the original donor, so that it was understood what she was paying for and what was going to happen as a part of her donation, and what the city of Lake Forest and all the other affected parties were willing to do to allow that donation to happen.
Okay. It just seems that so many people are surprised by this, that going through the process of normal review to give people time to react and digest this and think about it, and perhaps come up with the money, as several donors did kind of at the last minute to preserve the other buildings at Elawa. It doesn't seem like such a bad plan to me.
Let me add a little clarity to my experience with the property, and then I have to apologize. I have to leave, Mr. Mayor. I have a son who just came in this evening from college, and I have to meet him and probably give him a check. But in any event, I was the chairman of the Parks and Rec Board at the time when we acquired the property, and there was some great hesitancy on my part for acquiring the property because of the structures on it. It was bought as a community or a neighborhood park for this part of the quadrant of Lake Forest. There was always a targeted park for this area of Lake Forest, and with the development of the area, we were able to acquire the 17 acres. And I always had some concern that the buildings themselves would become a drawback to the property. And Bob is correct. At one point, we were looking at raising the entire, all the structures because of the condition that they were in. I was the one from the get-go saying, I don't know who will contribute the significant amount of money that needs to be raised for a gentleman's farm. And growing up in Lake Forest, I didn't have the same kind of affection towards retention of our gentlemen's farms because I really didn't have a connection to that part of our society. It's a part of the society had been long gone, and I said, who really has that kind of passion to really retain buildings that really were for the very small percentage of our population that had that kind of wealth. But I was wrong, and we were able to find $3 million from 3 or 4 very generous people in Lake Forest, and they should be commended. But I've seen those buildings, and I've seen this one specifically, and I think that the community did have their opportunity to retain this structure and did not act, and I think we need to move forward. I think that we are only removing probably less than 10% of all these structures. The square footage of the entire complex, the vast majority of it will be retained. And if one was to view from home right now, they would look at a council that's really not very sensitive towards historic buildings. It couldn't be more farther from the truth. This council and previous councils have indicated a real commitment to preservation of historical buildings, whether it's the building we're in, Gorton Community Center, Grove School, Ragdale. We were participants in all of those. And unfortunately, we're going to have to take off a little of the leg to save the entire body. But I think it's certainly worth it. And I think we just need to move on this. We are the ones who ultimately will be deciding this. And I don't think it needs to go to the Building Review Board to tell us what we already know. So I'm really willing to act this evening, and let's get on with it.
Well, I don't think there's anything to vote on, but go ahead.
Sure, a couple comments. You know, I thought John's presentation at the beginning was exceptional because it certainly showed what can be done, what potential there is to turn a truly dilapidated building and series of buildings into something that is really remarkably beautiful. And so as I listened to this saga about the chicken house or poultry house or chicken coop, I asked the same question. You know, is the potential there in the same way that existed with the other buildings that have been restored? Of course, the other ones required a fair amount of money to do that, I'm sure, and that's a big issue here with this chicken coop too. Secondly, I appreciate Roger's reading to us about the deed restriction. As the lawyer on this council, I think it is incumbent upon the city council to abide by its legal obligations in its agreements, and if that is one that we have, then I think we should seriously take a look at it. I think it's a bad step for us to turn away from commitments that we have legally made. I echo Tom's comments about saving the larger piece even at the expense of perhaps a smaller piece, and we've done that with one other major piece of property here in the city, and the arguments were very much the same, and I think we definitely did the right thing and took the right step on that. So where does this all lead me? To a question, and maybe John can answer it or Bob can answer, and that is, what is the immediate need, or is there an immediate need for the brick of the chicken coop in order to now, at this point in this month, finish up the exterior of the main buildings, of any part of the main buildings? I know this is sort of now come to us as sort of a must-do kind of thing right now, but I really would like to know if the brick absolutely has to be taken and moved from one building to be affixed to the buildings that are already restored, because if not, then perhaps there is a small window to explore this a little bit further. Not that I'm terribly, terribly optimistic that it's going to work out for everybody the way the proponents of saving it want, but there just might be a little chance for some more deliberation on this before the ball comes in. So that's my thought about whether. So is there an answer to the question about whether we need the brick this week, this month, next month?
I think the construction schedule will answer that.
There are 3 areas where we plan to use the brick, and that's the paddock wall, which is kind of a stable area on the outside of the building. It's a rather large wall, and there are several piers that need to be rebuilt with this brick, and a couple of openings inside the buildings that need to be bricked up with the matching brick. So those are the areas that require this brick. It's just enough brick to do that work. There's going to be nothing left, essentially, once we take that brick. This work, we planned on doing it when, in the month of probably late March, early April. The weather's been bad, so we're not doing mortar work on the outside right now. It's just too cold. It's sensitive to this special lime formula we're using. So the work would begin as soon as the weather turned around.
So we may have 2 to 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks?
Right. I wouldn't start any sooner than 2 weeks.
But I think what's important here, and I will speak to this, is that I have gone to Open Lands and asked them if they have any interest, and they have not. This has been on the table for 18 months. It is not like we have not, just hearing about this, there is a letter out from the head of the Preservation Foundation, from the Elawa Foundation, noting that we were going to be tearing down the chicken coop 18 months ago. To come in today and say, gee, this is the first we've heard of it, this is a surprise, it's not a surprise. It's been out there, this has been on the table. The committee, when we had it, Roger, with all due respect, we talked about this issue. Maybe we didn't vote on it, but we certainly did talk about it as something that would happen. We have presented a plan. This was always part of the plan. We have an obligation to complete the plan, and it's important for us to continue to move forward. Any other comments?
I would just like to echo Alderman Widman's comments, and that is regarding process, following process.
By the way, excuse me, Deb, I'm not the only lawyer on the group.
Yeah.
I was going to say
And not the
something.
smartest one either.
Fair enough.
Well, with that, I'm going to turn to Vic Filippini. But I really believe the residents look to us to follow the proper process. I've heard all the various arguments. This is the first time that I've heard reference to a deed restriction, so I would merely turn to Bob and Vic and ask them to advise us, is there some, chat with us a little bit about the deed restriction, its applicability or its non-applicability here.
May I just respond to something Mike said? This may have been at the foundation level for an extended period of time. I didn't know about it until approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago, because, of course, the committees that I had served on no longer exist. When I heard about it, I went to the paperwork, because Bob knows I have very good files. And I found this deed restriction, and that's why I brought it forward tonight. I agree. I think if we do things the way we're supposed to do them, we don't get in trouble. When we digress from the process, it can lead to problems.
Vic?
Yes. Members of the council, there is in fact a deed restriction. Deed restriction requires the building to go through the building review process in its ordinary, its actual phrase is, its ordinary procedures for notice and public review and comment. One of the conditions of that ordinary review of public review and comment relates to considering proposals for buildings that can legally be constructed, maintained, altered, and the like. And the key point there is legally be maintained, etc. The chicken coop, as it is designed and existing, is not a structure that can be inhabited by people. One of the purposes of it was clearly for the maintenance of the animals. We no longer have a farm out there. Although it still is called Elawa Farm, it's not being used for a farm. We have certain requirements for a farm to be treated as a farm, and this is not a farm. As such, what we're talking about is a building that is not accessory to any permitted use. It has been in a condition of non-use for more than 2 years, which means it no longer meets the non-conforming status requirements of our code. And in addition to its physical condition, which is something that the manager in his authority under the code has an ability to correct, including through abatement and demolition, it also is a question whether that has something, whether that has viability under our code as a legal structure, given the fact that it's no longer a farm and it is not designed for habitable use.
And by the
Thank
way,
you.
Vic, would this have to be, if it's a public building, would this have to be ADA accessible?
Well, again, one would have to figure out what the use would be. It's not even habitable, so, I mean, the ADA accessibility is a even higher level of restoration, if you will.
So, Vic, I'm not sure where you actually ended up.
Yeah, so your opinion
Yeah,
is,
yes, there's a deed restriction, but then you got lost, you lost me in a fair amount of conversation of whether there was sounded like some exception or exclusion of a building like this from the, from the deed restriction or the BRB process. But I mean, I can't help but say that while maybe the normal inhabitants might be mostly animals, the inevitability is that people, whether they're adults or children, will be and would be coming into the building. So it's not without some human occupancy, even if it's not, you know, sleeping there.
Alderman Widman, from what I understand, the building does not have enough clear ceiling height to be a habitable building under our codes. So it is not a structure that can be legally inhabited, and as such, it's not a structure that is otherwise legal except as an accessory structure, and it is not permitted as an accessory structure because it is no longer a farm.
And that therefore means that...
That means that it's not a structure that can be built, and therefore, under our ordinary Building Review Board process, our Building Review Board considers applications of buildings and construction activity that is otherwise permitted under the code, so it can be reviewed for the exterior appearance. This lacks that first step. It's not something that can be permitted under the code. Therefore, it's not within our ordinary practices and procedures of the Building Review Board.
So
To put it in a slightly different context, if someone wanted to come forward and build the Sears Tower here in Lake Forest, we do not allow that anywhere. It would never come to the Building Review Board because it doesn't meet the threshold of being a legal structure.
So to sort of recast what Romy was saying, if this were on private property, there would be no way that the Building Review Board could permit those owners of that parcel to keep and rehabilitate this building.
They would need to determine, A, what the use is going to be.
Yeah.
And if they could not determine that it could be a legal use, then that would be a likely outcome.
Okay, thanks.
And I just a quick comment on my part. I mean, Stu, you've raised the issue of other decisions that we've made similar to this, and I would hate to, I mean, this is clearly one that is before us in terms of economics as well, and we need to move forward with this project, and I don't want to go without that being said. I think it would be somewhat, I don't know, it would not be a very sincere act for us to send this over to the Building Review Board if, in fact, at the end of the day, we're going to make the same decision. You know, council is the one that has to make these decisions, and this decision's been made long ago. So
Tom, with
think,
respect to Barrow, we did make a similar decision there, but only after months and months of conversation and testimony from the public and vetting of all the issues, and that's not what's going on here. And I must say that, if I were a resident listening to this, I would say that the city council, for some reason, seems determined to move forward with this, and on a technicality, is bending the rules for full review by the Building Review Board. That's how it seems to me. And it doesn't seem to me that this demolition is so urgent that we need to keep pressing forward, bending the rules. Let's go ahead and do a full review, even if we all know that we're going to come to the same conclusion. I think it's only fair that we go through the right process and let the residents of the city know that, we're bound by the same rules and regulations as any other private citizen in the city.
I just have to respond. I've been on the council almost 6 years. We don't bend the rules here. To imply to the citizens right now, Bob, that we're bending rules is really,
I said
think,
we're creating
unfortunate.
the appearance of that,
Well,
and I
you're
think
sending
that's
the
wrong.
message. Mr. Mayor, do you need my vote? Because I have to leave.
There is no vote.
You had something to say here?
I'm Patty Moore, 1091 Olmsted, and the president of the Middle Fork Homeowners Association. And so I wanted to speak on behalf of myself and the 61 residents immediately adjacent to this property, who were the folks that put in the initial $5,000 per lot seed money. $600,000 came in. So I know there have been other donors, but we feel that we've had a significant role in this. So we don't want our role to be diminished or forgotten in this process also. I would love our 61 homeowners to be more aware of what's going on and to see it go, even if there might be a technicality, an argument, a way to review this so that it's in keeping, so that it could avoid the review board. I think that's a fairly technical legal argument when the point is some additional time. I've understood that the bricks are available, that we could get additional bricks through, we've got a donor willing to give them, some Ohio brick company can make the appropriate bricks to use for the chicken coop, one would think, or for the wall and the necessary pillars, posts that he was just describing. Grab those, get the Ohio brickmaker to make them. You don't need to tear this building down right away, I would not think. And I would like to be able to go back to my homeowners association and say that the city council has thoroughly reviewed it and that the building review board has thoroughly reviewed it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name's John Drummond. I'm Rami Lopez's husband. I'd like to say we visited a lot of farm buildings, and we were encouraged to save our barn in McHenry County while a lot of barns are being torn down. And I'm glad we did. We got an award from the county for rebuilding the barn, and it was a very expensive thing, but we're happy we did it. And two things I want to say is, first of all, this is the only brick chicken coop I've ever seen in my life. The fact that it is brick and it was designed by Adler tells you two things: that it's not an insignificant building. In these historic developments, oftentimes the outbuildings become as important as the more important buildings. We tore down a couple of buildings on our site that we thought were insignificant. We later found out, when we learned more about it, that we should have saved those buildings. One was an outhouse and one was an ice house, and I'm sorry we didn't save them, because they do give historical context to the entire complex. Secondly, as you go through this process and the project becomes more successful and the community participates in the complex, you're going to find that you need additional buildings for storage, for plant material, for other things that you had not anticipated. And then you're going to get in a situation, well, what do we do? Do we build a new building? Do we put a temporary building up to provide for storage, or whatever it may be? I visited this building today. I walked around it, I walked inside of it. With all due respect to your staff, I did not see this issue you're talking about, head clearance. I didn't see that. I saw a very substantial building, albeit in poor condition in many cases. It has a temporary roof on it. You could mothball this building for a year or two, see if money comes in. If money doesn't come in, you give a fair warning to everyone and say the money hasn't come in. But I suspect the money will come in for this building, and it will be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I just add one thing? Because I think in addition to all that's being said, the City Council also has a fiduciary responsibility here. And I think, let's lay all the facts out on the table. We've had two independent people look at this building, and it will cost $1 million to renovate this building. Number two is our donor, which we, in addition to the foundation, committed that if all the other work was done and the funds had not been raised in the past 18 months, that this chicken coop would come down, the donor has not completely written the check. You are still exposed to another $500,000. That, quite frankly, if I was a donor, I might say, you changed the rules. Not only am I not going to give you the balance of my donation, but I want the original donation back as well. And finally, there's exposure out there, and I think this goes back to your comments, Mr. Mayor, is that a loan has been made to the foundation for $465,000 that has to be paid off to just do the other stuff that is getting done right now. We are talking about exposure of $2 million out there for these various aspects, and I think that is a real concern that we have to keep in mind in all of this conversation. In 7 years, $400,000 outside of these three donations has been raised by this community. How long is it going to take to raise $2 million, I guess is my question. And this is something that I think the council has to weigh in this consideration.
And what other priorities we'd like to see taken down? The train station, Bennett Hall, other things that we have to take care of.
We have a bird in the hand here. Let's go. Mr. Mayor, I have to leave.
Would you like to call the vote?
I don't know. I didn't know we needed a vote.
There's no vote.
There is no vote, okay.
Good to see you, Mike.
Mr. Swarthout, good to see you. Hey, the foundation would like to make a pledge to your son, if we could. I understand. Mr. Mayor and members of council and the staff. Interesting kind of dynamic here. I see a lot of things going on, and certainly, Mr. Kiley, a lot of what you're saying is true.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Rashowski, 648 Waveland Road in Lake Forest, local architect. I think one of the things that I clearly see is that a lot of the people on this group have been involved with a project. As Ms. Menz said, a lot of projects like this in town have taken 20 years, and you guys have pulled it off in almost less than a year. I think there's fire and momentum, and I think you see the end in sight, and I think there's a drive to let's get this thing done. And as an ex-corporate guy, that's the way we work. We're challenged with finishing a goal, and we do it. At the other hand, you see how many of us who appear in front of the boards with our clients are asked to be patient and listen, because there are, issues here that just don't feel like they've been fully vetted, and give our process a chance. And many of the people here that have been on those boards know that we have to, gag our clients sometimes and drag them out because they're not happy with the process. So I think there is a real need and desire to move forward to completion of something that has begun and is near the finish line. But at the same time, there clearly is an issue here. We have a building that's sitting there that, what is it worth? It may take several $1 million to fix it up, where maybe less than a year ago, we happened to stumble upon a small, what do we call it? Log cabin inside of one of our houses. And when we did that, we didn't, certainly the developer wanted to move forward quickly and get it out of the way, and we all said, and the board said, and the public supported, wait a second, there might be a better solution. Well, it didn't take $1 million. I'd like to say there's people around here with more money than brains, but that's not true. They have far more brains than I have. And I think there's a chance that if it's put on the table, that a lot of things could happen. There's a lot of David Adler fans around town that might like to just pick that building up and put it somewhere else. So I would just think that, again, there certainly are technicalities here, and there certainly is the frustration that's warranted. Again, as an ex-corporate guy, this would just frost me that I can't just push to conclusion. So I would just like to say I think there's a lot of issues at hand here from both sides, but that I've always believed when I took a project to the boards, it always finished a better project, and I think this maybe has that opportunity. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Anything further? Move on to the consent agenda. Next item is the consent agenda. It's approval of the minutes from February 19th, 2008. Any additions, corrections?
Motion to approve?
We have authorized invoices.
You never let me speak, Lou.
No, I just want to keep it moving.
Quick draw.
We need approval of authorized invoices and payrolls totaling $1,805,351.91. And then we also need authorizations of treasurer's warrants to meet expenses for March 2008.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Alderman Woodman.
Aye.
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 Alderman Looby.
Aye.
Alderman Haddad.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, the motion carries.
The next item is the Telecommunications Network Expansion Project update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Earlier this evening during the Committee of the Whole meeting, there was a full presentation and an update on the city's telecommunications network expansion project. This evening, I am requesting that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Columbia Telecommunications for a Phase 1 design engineering of the new network in an amount not to exceed $51,000. And further, to direct staff to work with the school districts to draft an intergovernmental agreement that will define our respective responsibilities and partnership for this project. If there are any additional questions that the council may have with respect to this, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll sit down.
You heard this presentation at the Committee of the Whole. Any questions?
I thought he gave a great presentation earlier, and this is definitely something we should move forward with. So I'd make a motion to go ahead and authorize the agreement with CTC.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Gravenhorst.
Aye.
Alderman Newton.
Aye.
Alderman Elawa.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Hanrahan.
Aye.
Alderman Looby.
Aye.
Alderman Haddad.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, the motion carries.
Okay. This is an item for any additional items for the council to discuss.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion under new business to send the demolition of the chicken house to the Building Review Board.
Second.
Dick, can we vote on this?
It is not a matter of final action. It's something that can be considered by the council, yes.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comment, Bob? Heard it all. Moved and seconded to send it to the Building Review Board. All those, is this a voice vote or a roll call vote, Vic?
Do it by voice vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's defeated. I have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? City Council meeting is adjourned.